Hi, I'm Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes, family can be your worst enemy, especially when money and pride are involved. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our small family tech company, transforming it from a struggling little shop into a $50 million enterprise. But I would come to learn that success can twist people, and that jealousy doesn't always come from rivals, but from those sitting at your own dinner table. It all started years ago when our business was nothing more than a modest computer repair shop tucked away in a quiet strip mall. My father, David Chen, started it 2 decades ago, driven by his love for machines and his dream of building something lasting for his family. It was never wildly profitable, just enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. But to Dad, it was everything. My older sister Emma was always the star, brilliant, confident, and adored. She got straight A's, went to an elite business school, and had that charm that made people listen. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. I stayed behind to help Dad run the shop, fixing computers between classes while earning my computer science degree at the local university. "Sarah, you're wasting your potential here," Emma used to tell me during her visits home from college. "You should be in Silicon Valley, not fixing old desktops for retirees." Her words stung, but I saw something she didn't: potential. The shop wasn't glamorous, but it was a starting point. While Emma was studying theory and corporate strategy, I was learning from real customers, real problems, and real business pain points. In my final year of college, I developed a simple inventory management software for small businesses, intuitive, affordable, and tailored to people who couldn't afford big-name enterprise systems. Dad was skeptical at first. "Who's going to buy something made by a college student?" he asked, half teasing. But when local shops started lining up to purchase licenses, his skepticism melted. "Maybe you're onto something, kiddo," he said with a grin. For the first time, I saw pride in his eyes. Those words meant the world to me, more than any paycheck or degree ever could. If only I had known that pride would one day fade into disappointment and betrayal. Over the next few years, I worked tirelessly, 14-hour days, weekends, holidays. The shop slowly transformed into Chen Technologies, a software development company serving clients across the state. Our profits grew, and soon we had an office, a team, and investors. Meanwhile, Emma was thriving in New York, climbing the ranks at a top consulting firm. She rarely visited home, except during holidays, when she dropped subtle reminders of her success: expensive handbags, designer clothes, and stories about boardrooms and billion-dollar clients. "Don't work yourself to death, Sarah," Mom used to tell me, bringing home-cooked meals to my office late at night. "You deserve to live a little too." But I didn't want a little. I wanted something lasting, something that proved I wasn't just the quiet daughter who stayed behind. By the 5th year, our company crossed $1 million in annual revenue. That was the moment Emma suddenly rediscovered her interest in the family business. She called out of the blue one evening. "I think it's time I came home," she said smoothly. "With my business background, I can help you scale this company. Together, we could make it global." At first, I was thrilled. Maybe this was finally our chance to work side by side, as equals, but I was naive. When Emma returned, she didn't come to collaborate, she came to take over. Within weeks, Dad was singing her praises, talking about how her expertise could take us to new heights. Soon after, she was appointed co-CEO, a decision I was informed of rather than consulted on. "Having Emma at the top will look good for investors," Dad said. "She's polished, you're the brains, she's the face. It's a perfect balance." But it wasn't. Over the next 5 years, our partnership became a quiet war. I focused on technology, innovation, and client relations. Emma focused on publicity, glamour, and self-promotion. She became the public face of Chen Technologies, giving interviews, attending galas, and collecting awards that rightfully belonged to the entire team. In every article, she was painted as the visionary, the young female CEO revolutionizing tech. My name was mentioned only in passing, if at all. The company grew to $50 million in annual revenue, but my joy dimmed with every passing day. Emma's decisions became unilateral, her tone dismissive, her ambition unchecked. She began holding executive meetings without me, forming alliances within the board. I was slowly being erased from my own creation. Then came Dad's 60th birthday party, the night everything came crashing down. Emma organized it. Naturally, she booked the city's most luxurious hotel ballroom, invited investors, clients, and journalists at the celebration of legacy, she called it. I arrived early, dressed simply in a black dress and a modest necklace Mom had given me years ago. Emma took one look and frowned. Couldn't you have made more of an effort? She whispered sharply. This is an image event, Sarah, not a family barbecue. I bit back my irritation and helped with the preparations, greeting guests, checking logistics, ensuring everything ran smoothly, the kind of invisible work I'd been doing my whole life. When dinner began, Emma stood to give a speech. I expected something sentimental about Dad, maybe a few words about family and gratitude, but as soon as she started speaking, I realized something was off. Her tone was polished, her words rehearsed. As we celebrate my father's 60th birthday, she began, I think it's also time to celebrate a new chapter for Chen Technologies. The board and I have been in discussions about the company's direction. The board? My stomach tightened. I hadn't been invited to any board meetings in months. For too long, we've been limited by outdated thinking and internal resistance. Emma continued smoothly, her gaze locking onto mine. That's why, effective immediately, I will be assuming the role of sole CEO. The room went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. She wasn't done. Sarah has played an important part in maintaining our systems, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. But moving forward, the company needs modern leadership, someone who understands global strategy, not just code. A ripple of whispers spread across the room. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, clients, colleagues, investors, watching, judging. Frankly, Emma said, smiling as though she were doing me a kindness, Sarah, you've become more of a liability than an asset. It's time you stepped aside gracefully. I turned to Dad, desperate for him to intervene, to say something, anything, but he only nodded approvingly, his eyes full of pride for the wrong daughter. Mom sat silently beside him, her hands trembling, her gaze fixed on her plate. In that moment, the weight of 10 years, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the missed birthdays and lost relationships, crashed over me like a tidal wave. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the polished marble floor. The noise echoed through the ballroom, slicing through the murmurs. Everyone expected me to yell, to cry, to make a scene, but I didn't. I walked calmly to my father's table, pulled a small box from my purse, and placed it in front of him. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving behind the company, the family, and the life I had built from the ground up. I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out of the ballroom, head held high, heels clicking against marble, leaving behind the whispers, the gasps, and the weight of betrayal. The chandeliers glittered above me like 1,000 judging eyes, but I didn't flinch. For the first time that night, I felt free. Outside, the cold night air hit my face, sharp and cleansing. The city lights blurred as I blinked back, tears, not of weakness, but of clarity. Behind me, laughter resumed in the ballroom, forced and shallow. Emma might have thought she had one, standing there in her designer gown, basking in the applause of people who didn't know the truth. But she had no idea that her victory was built on borrowed ground, and I was about to pull it all out from under her. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by everything they'd dismissed, awards, patents, certificates of innovation, each one bearing my name. The silence hummed with possibility. My computer screen glowed in the dark, and as I powered it on, I could almost hear the soft crackle of a storm about to break. Emma thought she had cornered me, humiliated me, stripped me of everything, but she had forgotten one crucial detail: I was the company. Without me, Chen Technologies was nothing more than an empty shell with pretty branding. As the screen lit up, I opened my files, scrolling through contracts, ownership documents, code licenses, all the little pieces of leverage I had built over the years, quietly and meticulously. For once, I allowed myself a small smile. Let's see how you handle this, sister, I murmured. By the time the sun rose, my decision was made, my plans set in motion, and the first wave of emails already sent to every major client, partner, and employee at Chen Technologies. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, sunlight spilling through the glass walls of our headquarters. I arrived early, dressed sharply in a charcoal gray suit. The building was still quiet, the calm before a storm. I waited in the executive conference room, sipping coffee, watching the clock tick toward 9 a.m. Every second felt like the countdown to detonation. At precisely 9, the glass doors swung open. Emma entered first, every bit the polished executive, perfect hair, tailored blazer, that confident smirk that had always come easily to her. Dad followed, his face full of self-satisfaction and misplaced pride. "Sarah," Emma said coolly, her tone clipped with irritation, "what are you doing here? I assumed after last night you'd have the dignity to stay home." I set my cup down carefully. "Good morning to you too, Emma. I just came by to wrap up some loose ends." Her eyes narrowed. "Loose ends?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly, "like the company's future." Dad stepped forward, crossing his arms. "There's nothing to discuss, Sarah. The board has already confirmed Emma as CEO. You had your time." I nodded. "Right, the board." I tapped my tablet and the conference screen lit up with a set of documents. "Let's talk about that for a second." You see, while Emma was busy doing press tours and giving keynote speeches about innovation, I was the one actually building this company, and there are a few details I think you've both conveniently forgotten. Emma crossed her arms, her lips twisting into a smirk. "This should be good." "First," I said, "ownership." I brought up the original incorporation documents. When we started Chen Technologies 10 years ago, Dad gave us each 25% of the company and kept 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for the product expansion, Dad, you sold me 6% of your shares to finalize that deal. Remember that? You were too busy attending Emma's award ceremony to review the papers, so you signed them. Dad's expression froze. "That can't be right." "Oh, but it is." I clicked to the next document, "which means I now hold 51% ownership of Chen Technologies." Emma's smile faltered. "You're lying." I turned the screen toward her. "Feel free to read the signatures yourself." The color drained from both their faces. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. But I wasn't finished. "And second," I continued, "the software that brings in 80% of this company's revenue, the core system our clients rely on, isn't owned by Chen Technologies. It's licensed from another company, my company, Innovate Solutions, LLC. Dad's brow furrowed in confusion. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I replied evenly, "that the licensing agreement expired this morning at 9 a.m. Dad paled. "The renewal papers, the ones you sent me last week, the ones I didn't sign. Because you were helping Emma plan her little party." I finished for him. "Yes, those papers." Emma's eyes blazed. "You underhanded little." "Careful," I interrupted softly, "you haven't heard the rest." I pulled up my email inbox, revealing a cascade of new messages. "Last night, I informed our clients of the leadership change. You'll be pleased to know that many have already chosen to terminate their contracts, effective immediately. Most of them signed personal loyalty clauses with me, not Chen Technologies." Emma's phone buzzed frantically. Her face turned ashen as she read the incoming alerts. "You can't do this. The company will collapse." I finished for her. "Yes, unless you agree to my terms." Dad slumped into a chair, looking decades older. "What terms?" "Simple," I said, folding my hands. "Option 1, I walk away. I take my software, my staff, and my clients. You keep your name and your empty offices. You can explain to the investors why the company's value just dropped to zero." Emma's lips trembled. "And option 2? You both resign," I said calmly. "I take over as sole CEO. You keep your shares as silent partners and collect dividends. Emma can take a nice severance package, and a glowing recommendation for her next job." Emma's composure cracked completely. "You planned this," she shouted. "You've been waiting to stab us in the back." I shook my head. "No, Emma, I spent 10 years protecting this company while you chased attention. I never wanted this, but you forced my hand the moment you called me worthless in front of our family and our investors." Her voice wavered. "You're destroying everything." "No," I said quietly, "I'm saving what's mine." My phone buzzed again. Another client termination notice. Time was on my side, and we all knew it. "Decide," I said simply. "You have 5 minutes." The next hour was chaos. Lawyers called in, contracts signed, resignations filed. When the dust settled, I was sitting alone in what was now officially my office. Through the glass, the city skyline stretched endlessly. My reflection stared back, calm, composed, and finally in control. But beneath the triumph, there was sorrow. The cost of victory was high. That evening, Mom came to see me. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. Did it have to end this way, Sarah? I sighed. They left me no choice. They would have taken everything and thrown me aside. She nodded, her expression torn between pride and grief. What happens now? I turned my laptop toward her, showing her the plans I had already drawn, expansion projects, new product lines, innovations that would redefine our future. Now, I said softly, I build something bigger, but this time, on my own terms. A year later, Chen Technologies, under my leadership, had tripled in value. Investors returned, clients trusted me again. Emma took a position at a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but wiser. Dad retired quietly, the weight of his mistakes etched into every line on his face. We still see each other on holidays, exchanging polite smiles and carefully chosen words. The warmth that once existed between us is gone, replaced by a fragile truce built on shared regret. Sometimes, late at night, I look through old photos, our family in that tiny repair shop, Dad grinning proudly, Emma and I shoulder to shoulder. I miss those simpler days, but I've learned that love doesn't justify betrayal, and family doesn't excuse disrespect. In business and in life, respect is earned, not inherited. Word of my story spread across the industry. At conferences, I'd catch whispers, "That's Sarah Chen, the one who..." They never finished the sentence. They didn't have to. My success said everything. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at Emma's old business school's graduation ceremony. The topic, Hidden Strengths, the Power of Underestimated Leaders. I smiled when I read it. It felt poetic. As I stand now in my office, overlooking the skyline that once felt impossibly distant, I realize something Mom said years ago was true. Success is the best revenge, Sarah, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. And so I have. I've stopped fighting the ghosts of the past. These days, I build, not out of anger, but out of purpose. I still keep that small, wrapped birthday gift I never gave Dad, a photo album of our company's journey from a dusty repair shop to a tech empire. Maybe one day I'll give it to him. Until then, it sits on my desk, a reminder of how far I've come, and how much stronger we become when those who underestimate us push us to rise higher than they ever imagined.